I never thought my family would be the kind of people whose secrets could ruin everything. I always believed we were normal in that messy, loving, complicated way families are. My name is Sarah. I'm 42, and I grew up as the middle child in a house that was always full of tension, laughter, and unspoken rules. I was the peacemaker, the one who tried to keep everyone happy, the one who smoothed over fights that I shouldn't have had to. And for a long time, I thought that was enough. My older brother, David, was the golden child. Everyone adored him, from our parents to the neighbors. He was charismatic, confident, and somehow always managed to get his way. Even as kids, I could see that whatever he wanted, he usually got. Then there was Emily, my younger sister. Sweet at first glance, but underneath she carried a bitterness that could bloom into jealousy faster than anyone realized. I loved her, but growing up it felt like I was always competing for scraps of attention between her and David. Our parents, Margaret and Richard, were complicated. Mom loved us, but she had favorites. Dad tried to be fair, but he had a strict side that sometimes tipped the scales without him even realizing it. And when he passed, that strict fairness, or what I thought was fairness, was about to turn our lives upside down. It all started the day Dad's funeral ended. We were all exhausted, pretending we were holding it together, but the tension hung heavy. David was quiet in a way that scared me. Emily was trying not to cry but failing, and my mother looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, like the weight of a lifetime had finally crushed her. Michael, my husband, held my hand. He's always been my anchor, but even he looked uneasy. The will was to be read a week later. I thought I knew what to expect. Dad wasn't flashy with his money, but he had a house, some investments, and a small trust. I assumed David would get the house because, well, he always did. That's how it had always been. I assumed Emily would get a little extra money, maybe something for her therapy fund. And me, I thought I'd get a few odds and ends, a few sentimental things, nothing more. I was wrong. Even thinking about the will reading now makes my stomach knot. Something about walking into that lawyer's office, seeing my family seated stiffly, forced smiles, whispered complaints, it felt like stepping into a battlefield. I'd tried to stay calm, to remind myself that no matter what happened, this was just property. But I didn't realize that was just the beginning of the nightmare. The morning of the will reading, I could barely eat. Michael tried to calm me down, making small talk about breakfast and the weather, but my mind kept wandering back to the house, the lawyer, and the tension I could already feel radiating off David and Emily. When we arrived at the office, the lawyer greeted us politely, but there was a stiffness in the air that made me shiver. I wasn't sure if it was nerves or if I already sensed the storm about to hit. We all sat down. David crossed his arms, his jaw tight. Emily fiddled with her necklace, her eyes darting around like she was ready to bolt. Mom tried to smile at me, and I returned it, though it felt forced. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. "The last will and testament of Richard Thompson," he started, and then the words that would change everything. "The house located at 142 Maple Street is bequeathed to Sarah Thompson to own and occupy as she sees fit." I blinked. The lawyer's words seemed to echo in the room. I glanced at David. His face was as pale as a sheet. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Mom's eyes widened, but she didn't say a word. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I knew the house was valuable, but I never imagined Dad would leave it to me. Me, the middle child, the one who was always trying to keep the peace, the one who never caused trouble. My mind reeled. David's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "What? This isn't right. Dad wouldn't do this." His hands trembled slightly, and I could hear the fury in his words. "Sarah, you can't just... This isn't fair." Emily's voice joined in, quieter but sharp. I don't understand. Why you? Why not David? He's always been your favorite." Her words hit me like a slap. I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came out. Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Richard always made his decisions carefully. He loved all of you, but sometimes he had to make choices that he thought were right for each of you." I tried to smile, tried to reassure her and myself, but I could feel the tension boiling. David looked like he might explode, and Emily's tears were just the beginning. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Then came the bombshell. That night, my phone rang. The number wasn't familiar. Hesitant, I answered. "Sarah, you need to be careful," a quiet, urgent voice said. "What just happened with the will, it's not the end. It's only the beginning." I froze. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. There was a pause, then the line went dead. I stared at my phone, heart racing. I had no idea what this call meant or who had warned me, but one thing was clear. What I thought would be a simple inheritance dispute was about to become a war I wasn't prepared for. The days after the will reading were unbearable. David barely spoke to me except to glare with eyes full of accusation. Emily avoided me, but her silence felt like a knife twisting deeper than any words could. Even my husband Michael seemed on edge, worried that the tension would spill over into our home. It started with little things. David would leave passive-aggressive notes around the house. "Enjoy it while it lasts," scrawled on a Post-it stuck to the fridge. Emily would make cutting remarks in front of Mom. "I guess some people are just luckier than others." I tried to ignore it, tried to remind myself that the house wasn't worth losing my family over, but the poison was spreading faster than I could stop it. Then came the first meeting with the lawyer to handle the property paperwork. David barged into the office with Claire by his side, practically dragging her along like she was a weapon. He slammed a file on the table. "I want this reviewed. I want proof Gad wasn't pressured or manipulated. And you, Sarah, don't think you can hide anything." I felt my cheeks burn. "David, I didn't do anything. Dad made his choice. You have to respect that." He leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Respect. Respect is earned, Sarah. Don't think for a second you're untouchable." I swallowed hard and looked at Michael. He gave me a reassuring nod, but even his confidence couldn't calm the rising storm. Emily, meanwhile, kept whispering to Claire, glancing at me with a look that twisted my stomach. It was like they were plotting in real time, sharing glances that I wasn't supposed to see, and I hated that I could. Then came a memory I hadn't thought about in years, a memory that made my blood run cold. I was 12, hiding behind the living room curtain, overhearing David and Emily laughing with Mom about me. Something about middle child always playing peacemaker, letting others walk over her. At the time, I brushed it off as childish cruelty, but now, seeing the patterns repeat, I realized it had never stopped. The tension escalated over the next week. David tried to find legal loopholes, digging into Dad's past decisions. Emily, egged on by Claire, spread subtle rumors among extended family members, painting me as greedy and manipulative. I tried to defend myself, but everyone seemed to already have their minds made up. And then came the moment that made my heart shatter. Emily pulled me aside one evening, her eyes wide and panicked. "Sarah, I know this is going to sound crazy, but you're not Dad's daughter. I've seen the papers, the hospital records." I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but the look on her face was serious, almost desperate. My chest tightened. What are you saying?" I whispered. Emily swallowed, voice trembling. I think Mom had an affair before you were born. I found some old letters. I didn't mean to, but I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. My life, my identity, everything I thought I knew about my family was suddenly crumbling. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about secrets that had been buried for decades and about betrayals I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't speak. My hands were shaking, my chest tight as if I'd been suffocating for hours. Sarah, no, that can't be true, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. But deep down, a cold, creeping fear was spreading through me. What if it was true? What if everything I thought I knew about myself, about my family, was a lie? I swear, Sarah, Emily said, grabbing my arm. Her grip was tight, desperate. I didn't want to believe it either, but I've seen the hospital records. There are letters from Mom to a man Dad barely knew. I found them in the attic. I thought I should tell you first. I stumbled backward, my mind spinning. I thought of Dad, the man I had idolized, the man who had always been my rock. Could he have been raising a child that wasn't his own? I wanted to scream, to ask Mom why, if she were still alive, but all I had were fragments of memories, whispers of family conversations, and the gnawing uncertainty now gnawing at my heart. That night, I couldn't sleep. Michael held me, but even his warmth couldn't quiet the storm in my mind. I kept thinking about the house, the will, the inheritance, and how everything seemed to be unraveling faster than I could catch it. Then I remembered something my mother had once said, years ago, before she got sick. Some truths are too heavy to bear, Sarah. You may not understand now, but one day you will. I thought she meant something small, something about family squabbles or childhood lessons, but now I wondered if she had been warning me about something far bigger. The next morning, I went back to Dad's study. I knew Emily was right about the letters. Somewhere in this house, hidden among dusty files and old photo albums, was the evidence of my life being a lie. I searched until I found a small, unmarked envelope tucked in the back of a drawer. My mother's handwriting. My heart thudded so loud I could barely breathe. Inside was a single folded letter. My hands trembled as I opened it. Her words were delicate, almost apologetic, but every line was heavy with truth. The affair, her fears, her love for Dad, and her reasoning for leaving me the house anyway. The letter revealed things about all of us, secrets that had been kept carefully hidden for decades. And the moment I read the final lines, I understood why Dad had made his decision. But instead of relief, the letter felt like gasoline on a fire. It answered some questions, but it raised so many more. I felt trapped between love and betrayal, between loyalty and self-preservation. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, that sharing this letter, or keeping it secret, would ignite a war I couldn't control. I didn't know it then, but this letter would change everything. And just as I was about to put it back in the drawer, my phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "We need to talk. It's worse than you think." I stared at the screen, heart hammering. Worse than this? How could it possibly get worse? The next day, I called Emily. We met in the small cafe we used to go to as kids, the one where we'd shared ice cream cones and whispered secrets. Now the air between us was tense, heavy with fear and anticipation. I could barely look at her, knowing she carried pieces of the truth I wasn't ready to face. "You need to see it, Sarah," Emily said, sliding a folded piece of paper across the table. My stomach turned. It's a letter Mom wrote. I didn't even know it existed until I went through some old boxes yesterday. I hesitated, then unfolded it carefully. Her handwriting, shaky and familiar, spilled across the page like a confession. She admitted to the affair, an affair that had happened before I was born, but she also explained why Dad had chosen me for the house. She wrote about my upbringing, about the love he had given me regardless of biology, and about his hope that I would carry forward the family home with care. There were other revelations, too, small but sharp, like throwing knives. Mom had hidden savings for Emily's therapy, money she didn't want spent carelessly,
And she had made quiet adjustments to David's inheritance to teach him responsibility, but neither of them had known. The letter painted my parents not as perfect people, but as deeply flawed humans trying to do right by their children in a way only they could understand. I folded the letter slowly, my hands shaking. For the first time, I felt a flicker of clarity amidst the chaos. But clarity came with a price. I knew sharing this letter would blow open the simmering tensions, expose every hidden resentment, and possibly destroy what little peace we had left. That evening, we had a family meeting, though by that point, it felt more like a confrontation waiting to explode. David arrived first, slamming the door behind him. His face was red, a mix of anger and disbelief. Emily lingered by the window, avoiding eye contact, while Claire hovered at his side, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. I took a deep breath and held up the letter. "I've found something I think you all need to see," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The room went silent. David lunged forward. "What is it? What are you doing?" I ignored his outburst. I said, "This is a letter from Mom. It explains everything about the will, about why certain things were done the way they were, and it reveals truths about all of us. I think we need to be honest with each other." Emily's eyes widened, and I saw a flicker of guilt pass over her face. Claire's lips pressed into a tight line, her expression unreadable. And then David said something that froze my blood. "You don't know what you're doing, Sarah. You think you can play the hero here? You think we'll just take this lying down?" My hands were trembling, but I held the letter higher. "I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm just..."
David laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Understanding? You have no idea what understanding is. You've always been the middle child, the peacemaker, the one who hides behind everyone else's mess. Well, this isn't your mess anymore, and I won't let you play with fire in my family." I felt the air grow thick, the tension so sharp I could almost taste it. I looked at Emily, hoping for support, but she was shaking, caught between loyalty and fear. And in that moment, I realized that revealing the letter was only the beginning. It had opened doors to secrets, resentments, and betrayals I couldn't even imagine. I clutched the letter to my chest, heart pounding, and deep down, I knew one thing. The family I thought I knew, the people I had loved and trusted, was about to change forever. That night, after the family meeting had dissolved into shouting and accusations, I sat on the edge of my bed, trembling. Michael sat beside me, holding my hand, his jaw tight. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I shook my head, unable to find words. The next morning, the storm continued. David came over under the guise of talking things through, but I knew better. He walked into the living room, his expression cold and calculating, Claire trailing behind him like a shadow. "Sarah, I've been thinking. Someone clearly influenced Dad when he made that will. Someone persuaded him to favor you over me and Emily." His eyes flicked toward Michael, and my stomach dropped. I felt my throat close. "Michael had nothing to do with it, David. Dad made his choice. You need to respect that." David laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Respect? Respect is earned, and right now, you've earned nothing. You think your husband didn't play a part in this? I've seen the way he's whispered in your ear, guided your thoughts. He's manipulated you, and through you, Dad." I stared at him in disbelief. That's ridiculous. Michael would never. He's been nothing but supportive." Claire smirked from the corner. "We just want what's fair," she said sweetly, her tone dripping with poison. But I could see it in her eyes. This was about control, about taking the house and destroying me in the process. Emily stood between us, fidgeting. "David, I don't know. Maybe it's true. Maybe Michael did influence Dad." Her words cut through me like a knife. I couldn't believe she'd even consider it. I felt panic rising, suffocating and sharp. My own sister, my blood, was doubting me. I turned to Michael, needing him to defend me, and he did, but his voice trembled. "I swear, Sarah, I never interfered. Your father's decision was his own. You have to trust me." David's face contorted with rage.
I'll prove it. I'll show the emails, the messages, everything. You'll see how deep this goes." My chest tightened. Every word he spoke planted seeds of doubt in my mind. The house, the inheritance, the letter, everything was spiraling out of control. I felt like I was drowning, the people I loved turning into strangers overnight. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the living room, clutching Mom's letter like a shield, thinking about all the lies, the hidden agendas, the family I thought I knew. And then, as if the universe wanted to mock me, I overheard a conversation. Emily was whispering on the phone, her voice low but frantic. "I don't know, Claire. Should I tell her the truth? It was me. It wasn't Michael. I didn't mean to. I just panicked." My heart skipped a beat. I pressed myself against the wall, listening as my world tilted. Emily. She had lied. The evidence David had was forged, twisted, and all this time I had been caught in a trap I hadn't even known existed. I backed away from the wall, my mind racing. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about Michael, about myself, it was all tangled in betrayal. And yet, for the first time in days, a spark of clarity emerged. I knew who the real enemy was, but knowing didn't make it easier. The confrontation wasn't over. It was only about to get worse. The next morning, I didn't speak to anyone. I went straight to Dad's study, clutching Mom's letter like a shield. Michael followed silently, knowing words weren't enough. I couldn't believe the web of lies my own family had woven around me. David, Emily, Claire, they all thought I had been manipulated. None of them suspected that the real manipulator was standing right in front of them, trembling behind their whispers. By evening, I confronted Emily. She avoided my gaze at first, twisting her hands in her lap like a guilty child. "Emily, tell me the truth. Was it Michael?" My voice shook, but my eyes held hers, demanding honesty. She exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. "No, it wasn't him. It was me. I saw David getting angrier every day and I panicked. I didn't want him to blame me for not stopping you. So I forged the emails and messages to make it look like Michael influenced Dad." The room felt like it tilted on its axis. I sank into the chair, my head in my hands. "You what?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, Sarah," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to protect myself, and I didn't know how to stop it. Claire suggested it, and I did it. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I felt a storm of emotions, rage, relief, disbelief. I wanted to scream at her, shake her, demand she understand the chaos she had caused. But then, beneath the anger, I felt something else. Clarity. I finally knew the truth, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny spark of control. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Emily, you understand what you've done? The family is falling apart because of this. David is furious, Claire is scheming, and Mom's gone, and you've dragged us all into this." She nodded, weeping. I know, and I can't take it back. I didn't want to lose all of you." I stood, holding Mom's letter tight. "You won't lose me, but this stops now. No more lies, no more manipulation. We deal with the truth from here on, even if it hurts." Emily nodded again, relief and fear mingling on her face. I could see that the weight of guilt had been crushing her, and I understood. She hadn't been malicious, she had been terrified. But fear had consequences, and now it was time to face them. Later that night, I sat with Michael, feeling the tension drain slightly. "You did the right thing," he said softly. "You faced the truth, and you're not letting them control you anymore." I nodded, but my heart was still heavy. The house, the inheritance, the secrets, they had tested every bond I thought was unbreakable. And while I had survived the manipulation, I knew the real battle was still ahead, confronting David and Claire and reclaiming my place in a family that no longer seemed familiar. And even as I tried to find peace, a nagging thought kept creeping in. Knowing the truth didn't mean the war was over. It was only just beginning. The next weekend, I decided it was time. The house, Dad's house, was where this all had to end. I sent messages to David, Emily, Claire, and Michael, a family meeting. No lawyers this time, just us. I needed to see them, look them in the eyes, and finally confront everything. David arrived first, scowling, like the world owed him justice. Claire followed, her smile too sweet, eyes sharp and calculating. Emily lingered behind, nervous, fidgeting with her sleeves. Michael held my hand, a silent pillar of support. I stood in the living room, taking a deep breath. "We need to talk," I began. "All of this, the letters, the will, the lies, it has to end tonight. No more secrets, no more manipulation." David laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "End tonight? Sarah, you think you can just come in here and fix everything? You've been playing with fire." I clenched Mom's letter in my hand. "No, David, I'm done being manipulated. Claire, Emily, everyone, I know the truth now. Emily forged the emails. Michael didn't influence Dad. And the letter, Mom left it to explain everything, not to divide us, but to show us why Dad made his choices." For a moment, the room went silent. David's face shifted from anger to confusion, then rage. "Emily? You?" His voice cracked. "You betrayed me? You lied to me? To all of us?" Emily started to cry, nodding. "I panicked, David. I didn't want to lose you, and I made the worst mistake of my life. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to get this bad." Claire's mask faltered just for a second before she recovered. "Well, Sarah, seems you finally uncovered all the little secrets," she said, voice sharp. "But do you think this ends here? People like David and we don't give up easily." I felt a surge of strength. "Maybe not, but I'm not afraid of you anymore. You tried to manipulate us, tear the family apart, but I know the truth, and I won't let lies control my life." David's face went pale. You really don't know what you're doing. Mom and Dad, they made mistakes, sure, but you've changed everything." I nodded. "Yes, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's the only way we can survive, even if it means facing the consequences." For hours we talked. We shouted. We cried. Emily confessed everything. Claire tried to spin excuses. And Michael, well, he finally saw the web of lies for what it was. It didn't erase the hurt, but it brought a strange sense of relief, like finally the air had cleared after a storm. By the end of the night, the house was quiet. Exhausted, I sat in the living room, Michael beside me. Emily hugged me, softly, murmuring apologies. David left without a word, his pride keeping him from reconciliation. And Claire, well, she stayed in the background, plotting no doubt, but for now, she had lost control. I looked around at the house, the walls echoing with our confessions, our fights, our truths. This was the family I had, the family I knew now, flawed, messy, but real. And I realized something. Surviving the storm didn't mean everything was perfect, but it meant I had taken the first step toward my own peace. The days after the confrontation were quiet. Too quiet, in a way, that made my chest ache. David didn't call. Emily visited occasionally, but there was still a wall between us, a fragile truce held together by guilt and relief. Claire? She disappeared entirely, probably retreating to plot her next move. I wandered through Dad's house one morning, the sunlight streaming through the windows, dust motes floating in the air like tiny reminders of the past. Every corner held memories, laughter, arguments, birthday parties, whispered secrets. I had always thought a house was just a place. Now I realized it was a witness, a keeper of truths and lies alike. Michael sat beside me on the couch, gently holding my hand. "You okay?" he asked, his voice steady, grounding me. I nodded, trying to smile, but the truth was heavier than any smile could carry. "I keep thinking about the cost," I said softly. "The cost of the truth. I have the house, yes, but I've lost something too. Family isn't the same. David is gone, at least for now. Emily, she's scared, and I can't fix everything. And Mom, I wish she could see that we survived it all, even if barely." Michael squeezed my hand. "You stood up for yourself, Sarah. You faced everything that tried to break you. That's not losing, it's surviving. And maybe in time, healing will come too." I leaned back, letting out a shaky breath. It was true. I had survived. But survival wasn't the same as happiness. Family had been fractured, and some bonds might never be repaired. But for the first time, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I wasn't living in shadows anymore. I wasn't being manipulated or doubted. I had claimed my place on my own terms. In the weeks that followed, I settled into the house. I fixed up the rooms, painted the walls, planted flowers in the garden. Every brush stroke, every small task, felt like reclaiming a part of myself. I would never forget the betrayal, the lies, the fear, but I would also never forget my strength. Sometimes, at night, I sit by the fireplace, Mom's letter beside me, and think about everything that happened. The family I had known is gone, but in its place is something real. Flawed, yes, but honest. And I finally understand. Keeping the house was never about the walls or the rooms. It was about standing up for myself, protecting what's mine, and facing the truth, no matter how painful. I will always carry the scars of what happened, but for the first time in my life, I feel unshakable. I know who I am. I know what I've survived, and I know that sometimes standing up for yourself, even when it costs you everything else, is the bravest, most necessary thing you can ever do. And as I sit there, the house silent around me, I realize that while I may have lost some family along the way, I've finally found myself. It's been months since the confrontation, and life has settled into a new rhythm. The house, once a battlefield, now feels like a sanctuary. Every corner tells a story, every photograph a memory, but none of them hold the suffocating weight of secrets anymore. I've learned that a family isn't just the people you're born to, it's the people who choose honesty, who choose love, and who choose to face the truth even when it hurts. David hasn't spoken to me since that night. I don't know if he ever will. Part of me grieves for the relationship we lost, the brother I loved despite his flaws. Emily visits occasionally. We're rebuilding slowly, one conversation at a time. She is genuinely remorseful, and I can see that her fear of losing me was real, even if her actions were misguided. Claire, she's gone, removed herself entirely. I sometimes wonder what she says to anyone who'll listen, but I've learned it doesn't matter. I don't need validation from someone who thrives on manipulation. Michael has been my anchor through all of this. I see him differently now, not just as my husband, but as someone who stood by me, never doubted me, and loved me when my family couldn't. I realize how rare that is, and I'm grateful every single day. Mom's letter sits framed on my desk. Her words, her honesty, and even her mistakes guide me daily. I think about her often, and the strength it must have taken to make the choices she made, knowing they wouldn't always be understood. I see now that Dad's decision to leave me the house wasn't favoritism. It was faith. Faith that I could survive the storms, that I could stand tall when everything around me was crumbling. The house is quiet now,